in the Seagram's block of Oshawa, Ontario. I'm an idol.
Don't be scared, homie. Come on. Okay, first of all, the world is smiling at you. The wrestling business is smiling at you. And don't you frown back on it.
Surprise, surprise, motherfucker. The king is back.
The man the hour, the man with the power. Too sweet to be sour.
Dylan Bowker.
This episode of Bowks Talking Bouts, I have the pleasure of talking with the XFFC president ahead of their 16th installment, which goes December 15th at the Entrax Center in Grand Prairie, but also will be on Fight TV. How's it going, Darren?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And I just wanted to first off mention the fact that the show was kind of postponed there. And the reason I want to bring that up is because I imagine it has to feel, hugely cathartic to get to this point here after, the unforeseen circumstances that popped up at the October 27th show.
Yeah, well, that's part of the game, right? You got fighters that are dropping out all the time, guys that, say they're professionals and they're supposed to have their medicals and don't have them all done and things like that. And so for me, it was just a better move. Instead of putting out like a half-assed product, it was just a better move to postpone the show and do it right.
Yeah, and no one can accuse you of ever putting out a half-assed product, especially from what I've seen since being on the scene there. But have things been going relatively smoothly leading into this fight? I know there's always going to be the situations where people are dropping out or you're, looking for certain people. Medicals might not be up to date. But have things been relatively smooth heading into this card otherwise?
They haven't been too bad. In this game, it's you're always running into, guys getting injured or guys, not having their medicals in place. But we try to book as many shows as we can, or as many fights as we can. So, if we do lose a few, you still got a show. I think on my first show, I booked 19. I ended up with 9.
Yeah, fair enough. And I noticed you had a status the other day where you were talking about how you were seriously considering bringing in some Americans or Russians. Was that sort of like a tongue-in-cheek comment, just being born out of the frustration of trying to get certain Canadian fighters in there? Or are you actually looking to have more American and Russian talent on future cards?
Well, I don't know. It seems like, like these Canadian boys, they all say they want to fight, but, I don't even know how many guys I've offered fights and they've declined the fights. It's getting to the point where it's ridiculous. So, if Canadians don't want to fight, and I've tried to keep this, I think I've had one American in the history of XFFC fight, which was Bristol Morunde. And other than that, it's been all Canadians. But if Canadian boys don't want to fight, I know a lot of Americans and a lot of Russians who message me every week looking for fights. And it's going to get to the point where if these guys don't want to do it, I'm going to bring them in.
Yeah, because I've seen... No, sorry, because I see there's been certain interest from Russian promotions. ACB had that show in Montreal a little while back, so I imagine similar opportunities could come up with promotions like that. That's the only reason I wanted to bring that up there.
Well, it's kind of funny because right now a lot of the Canadians are going and fighting in Russia, and a lot of the Russians want to come fight here. It's like, okay, how about the Canadians keep the Canadians and the Russians keep the Russians, and then
yeah.
I just don't get it, but whatever. We got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, maybe it's like the attraction of just wanting to travel around a little bit there. But, your promotion definitely has built up quite a name. Some of the alumni that have been through over the years, guys like Chris Hordesky, Chad Laprise, and just a lot of big names. And even Jesse Arnett as well as Jesse Ronson, guys who've, just picked up big victories on the Canadian scene there. Like, these guys came through your promotion. And, both came out on the losing end of there, Arnett and Ronson there. So it just really shows the caliber of competition that you bring through in your organization there.
Well, I like to think we put in some pretty good guys. I definitely have some work to do. And, I've been busting my ass to get the show on the Fight Network. And now it's on the Fight Network. I want my product to increase and become, a better quality of fighters. We've had some great fighters in the past, and, like Ronson coming off, on the losing end of 2 fights on my show when he fought at 170, and Ronson should not be fighting at 170. The kid's a stud at 55. That's where he needs to be. And he literally showed it last night. And, as for Arnett, Arnett fought on my show and he's done well. He's got 11 wins in a row now. I probably don't give Arnett the credit that he deserves, and I probably won't until, he steps up and fights Emperado, rather than saying that Emperado, doesn't deserve to fight him because he hasn't been fighting or whatever. But in my eyes, you know, that's the guy that you lost to last. Why not come avenge that loss? You avenge that loss, you get my respect.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and really just articulates the strength of competition on the Canadian scene, but also shows where XFFC is within that hierarchy there. But you mentioned the Fight Network and your last card there back in July, the 15th installment of XFFC, the Heatwave card. It's going to be airing on the Fight Network going forward there. So how has the relationship been so far, and just how's the interaction with that platform been up until this point?
With the Fight Network?
Yep.
Yeah, we've been, I've been back and forth with the Fight Network. We've had some issues with production and stuff like that. Not so much on my end, but like my guys' ends. And, so we've got that straightened out. And, I feel like we have a great product. I've seen some stuff on the Fight Network that's not so great. I feel like our product's pretty damn good. And, now that we have it on the Fight Network, I mean, the first thing I did when I got my show on the Fight Network was I sent the Fight Network an email and asked them, what can we do to make it better? They like it good enough to put it on, but I always want to step my game up one more time, right? So I'm like, let me know, look at it, tell me what we need to do to make it a better product. And to be quite honest, I want to get my shows on the Fight Network live. That's my next goal.
Yeah, and I think that's the next logical step from here on out. But talking about this card we have coming up here, being that it's the second installment of Festival of Fists there, I was wondering what the big improvements and certain differences that are going to come off of what was a great inaugural event.
Well, I don't know, like our last one was like fairly successful. This one is probably, as far as attendance, probably going to be more so. We've tried to step up our game. I'm kind of waiting on what's happening with Unified as well. There was a big, a moratorium that was put down by the city of Edmonton, which is banning, combative sports in Edmonton as of today. And, I know there's some lawyers involved and there's stuff in the works to try to make sure that Unified, 33 goes again. It's an insane mess. I can't even believe that they would do that. And, we have to call it like it is, right? It's based on one person. This whole thing is based on their chair of the commission. In my eyes, that's how I see it. I know that we've had fighters that have gone through that system, and there's been some pretty shady stuff that's happened with my guys that have fought in Edmonton. And, even as far as the licensing, I mean, I have to have, when I put an application in for a license, I literally have to have everything paid up in my license in hand 30 days after my application is in, and my application has to go in soon. Like, so, for instance, on Monday, I'll probably be putting my application in for my show in March. And then once it's approved, I have 30 days to get deposits in and stuff like that, and then my license is issued. So to have licenses happening a week out from a show I've never even heard of that up here. Like there's no possible way that would ever happen here.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was confused by, because I certainly have a bit of a vested interest in that as well. I was supposed to be covering that card cage side, so I was kind of, trying to contact certain people and just, figure out what was going on with all of that. And I was very taken aback at the fact that they didn't have all the proper licensing sorted out heading into that. Yeah, it's a total mess up there, and it definitely is tied to the Tim Hague situation. But the unfortunate thing too is that it's like this knee-jerk reaction covering up mistakes that were, of their own doing, you know what I mean? Like they didn't follow their own rules, their own efforts with, keeping out certain fighters for the times that they're supposed to be out if they've been knocked out or stopped a certain amount of time. So yeah, it's an altogether mess in that area, man.
I agree 100%. Even like reporting knockouts and stuff like that and reporting suspensions, it's been like really, really a lousy job done of it. And, like I've had guys that don't even know that they're under suspension, like on my show. Generally, I find it odd because on my show, when you get a suspension, you're actually handed a piece of paper that tells you exactly what you're suspended for, how long you're suspended, what you're required to do to get that suspension lifted. And I've never, ever seen that in Edmonton. Like, I don't know if it exists, but through my fighters, I've never seen it one time.
Yeah, and there's just certain things popping up like that, I mean, really should have been addressed a couple times prior. There's been quite a few warning signs, but I feel like, this is a byproduct of what happened with Tim Hague, unfortunately. And that it really is a sad sort of situation, but I also noticed there was an aspect of certain documentation not being shown to the family. So it's weird. In a surface area way, they're trying to make it about Tim Hague and trying to make some, bit of closure with the family and everything like that. But at the same time, they're, not giving them closure in a lot of other key ways.
No, I think 100% it's commission issue. I heard, before that they were one of the best commissions, and in the past probably 3 to 5 years, I would say they're probably one of the worst commissions.
And another thing I wanted to bring up in talking about the whole Edmonton situation is it seems like one of the big talking points with a lot of people on the scene are, talking about that overriding provincial regulatory body. Are you for that at all, or do you feel like the municipality-based Alberta system is still working?
I would be for it. I'm actually for it, and I'm actually against it on a couple of things, because one of the reasons why I would be for it would be because then, let's say, for instance, you take medicals, for instance, like we have medicals that differ from, say, other people's medicals and stuff like that, right? So I think having a standard medical system for medicals and MMA across Canada would be a benefit for everyone. BC seems to think that they have like the toughest medicals, but I think we probably have them beat. Our medicals are up here are pretty tough. And you could be, your blood could be expired by one day and you're not fighting.
So, it's really just that, like, comprehensive and meticulous and to the point with that, eh?
We do. Our commission is very straightforward. These are the rules. You play within the rules. You have no issues. You step outside the rules, and they're going to shut you down. It's just plain and simple.
Yeah, and all my experiences with the Grand Prairie Commission have been a positive one, and I've also had Darren Metzlar on the program in past, who plays a pretty key role with them, and has definitely put in a lot of great efforts in the past and continues to do that. But I kind of also wanted to drive the attention back here to the Festival of Fists 2 card, because just another example of a great card being put together within the Grand Prairie area there. The Alex Martinez, Adam Wayne pro fight there at lightweight was one that I thought was a compelling one. So what are your thoughts on that fight first off?
Well, unfortunately, Adam Wayne suffered an injury and he's actually out of that fight.
Oh, okay. Bummer.
Yeah, that just happened recently. So he's out. I had talked to Alex about finding an opponent for him, but being the fact that he's 3-0, that sets him up fairly well to go try out for the Ultimate Fighter. So he's decided to do that. I'm looking at a few things actually still this week for different main events to actually, and the main events would be actually probably, well, other than Alex being a local, they would probably be like a higher caliber main event. I'm also waiting on to see what happens with Unified, because I know that they've done some paperwork through lawyers, and they're trying to see if they can make that show still happen. And if that show doesn't happen, then you're probably going to see some of the fights from the Unified card jump over onto my card. I've already talked to Sonny about it, and Sonny's a good friend of mine, and I've had fighters contact me already, and I've just told them flat out, it's a respect thing for Sonny, and I'm not going to take any fights off of his card until he's 100% that he's not doing his.
Yeah, no, and it's good that there's that relationship between you guys. It sounds positive, no doubt. But are there any? I guess you can't really talk about it at this juncture. But are there any ideal fights you like to have, cross over, or kind of just like provide a platform for fighters regardless?
Well, I would probably try to apply. I'd probably try to just like let them have a platform. If guys contact me and they say, "Hey, man, we want to do this fight on your show," then chances are that fight could happen. I know he had some title fights on his show. Based on who's fighting and what comes over would dictate whether I would turn that into a title fight or just a 3-rounder.
Yeah, definitely certain factors like that. And that was one of the big things that bothered me when I initially saw what happened with this moratorium they were putting on the sports, because I was just thinking about all the fighters involved here and just it being in such close proximity to the holidays, just the way that they're handling this situation with combat sports in the area. It's just, it's heartbreaking for the men and women who get in there and just, really sacrifice the time and effort to just perform.
100%. I mean, like basically a lot of these guys take time off work to be able to do this, right? Because there's very few guys that are complete 100%, professional fighters full time, because you can't make a living at it in Canada, or you can't get enough fights, or whatever the case may be. And so, you've got guys that have taken time off work to be able to do this, and they're counting on a payday right before Christmas, and then what happens? They get shut down right before, and so that doesn't only affect the fighter, but it affects their families and, all that stuff. And that's one of the things that really bothers me about the whole thing. And not to mention the fact that from a promoter side, man, if they did that to me, I don't even know what I would do, man. I would be finished. And for Sonny, it's like the worst thing ever that could possibly happen to him. It's so insane.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine like the financial loss and just like all the other surrounding factors as it's gonna affect the scene going forward. Definitely a bummer on that one there. Of the fights that are together right now, which ones are you really stoked for?
Well, we've got a pro fight with, it's two debut pros that are heavyweights, Kyle Francotti and Chris Harrison.
Oh yeah.
And that's a fight that the people are really looking forward to. Francotti has a pretty big following up here. And he's really excited about the fight. Harrison's excited to get in there too. We have Randy Mahan versus Tom O'Connor. This is the second time they'll meet in the XFFC cage. Tom O'Connor came out on top the first time. But Randy's come a long way in a short period of time, and of course Tom's getting better as he goes, and so I expect that to be a very, very competitive fight. We have a little grudge match one between Isaiah Medituk and Brody Zerwani. That one should be a good fight. We have Will Robbins and Joe Westbrook, two GP boys throwing down. Those are usually good. Riley Kilpatrick versus Jesse Bull. Those two, they both talk like they want to stand up, so that should be a standout, bang 'em out one. Todd Vatcher and Quentin Tate. And again, that should be a good fight. Jordan Noseworthy, Josh White. Noseworthy's, I think he's quite a handful for Josh White, but, you never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then I've got guys like Michael Hill, that are kind of, that are sitting on the outside. We're just waiting to see what happens. We've got a few offers out there to other people, so we're going to see if some people accept it. I've offered a few other fights to guys. I've had guys just flat out turn it down because they say the guy offered them as a killer. Except, like one guy's got 6 fights and the so-called killer has 1. So I don't really understand that. But, I find the whole MMA scene seems to be changing a little bit. We're seeing guys that I don't know if they're just doing it for the fun of it, or if they're really trying to make an impact and make it to the big show. It's almost like the horizon is kind of changing a bit. The landscape's changing. You don't see these guys that want to get in there and bite down on their mouth guard and go to war and take somebody out who's maybe ranked higher than them and make some noise. So in the new year, I've decided in 2018 it's going to be like the new year. It's going to be like my champions are either going to defend, and I'm going to have them all defend in the new year. And if they don't, then unless they have an absolute note from a doctor that says they're in the process of dying, they're probably going to get stripped.
Yeah, and I was seeing you were posting about that, and I thought that was a good stance to have, and I think it will also create potentially a lot of really, big fights in the new year. I also saw that a potential goal of the promotion would be migrating to Revolution Place in 2018, all things depending. Are there any other promotional goals that XFFC has in the new year, though?
I would really like to take my show to Winnipeg or maybe Saskatoon.
Right on.
That's something that I'm kind of looking at. It's time to move this thing around a little bit. I don't want to be just sitting here in Grand Prairie. I think we're at the point now where we have a decent name. The fact that we've got the shows on the fight, or got the show on the Fight Network now is a huge thing for us. And I'm going to continue that momentum, and I'm not going to stop until I get this thing where I want it to be. And I'm pretty hard on myself, so chances are every time it gets better, I'm just going to keep pushing for a higher level.
Yeah, that's all you can really do, right? It's really hard to like rest on laurels because you always, well, I mean, I kind of get it too, where it's just like you're always looking for that next thing. It's like, oh, what else can I accomplish? What's the next thing? It's kind of hard to stop and smell the roses sometimes, but it's good that you have these certain goals. Heading outside sounds good. I mean, you guys had that Yellowknife show, and it seemed like that was a relatively successful show, all things considered. So it must have inspired confidence migrating outside the Grand Prairie area.
The Yellowknife show was a good test. I mean, like there was a few hiccups that we had. I mean, like one, that show couldn't be streamed because they didn't have fast enough internet at the venue. So that created an issue, and it pissed off a lot of people because a lot of people, like to watch it online and stuff like that. But, even little things like my trailer was too high to get into the venue. I had to pack everything in, like I had to hand bomb it in, which sucked. And there's little things like that. So, they're all learning processes. You're learning as you go. So, like these are things that you make sure, like, I'll tell you one thing, when I go to a new venue, I'm going to make sure that my trailer will fit in the venue. Like I can drive it through the door, because if I can't, chances are I'm not going to go there. That's not going to be my venue. So there's always little things like that or little hiccups that you got, but you just work through them and you keep going, right? So, it was a good, going to Yellowknife was a good thing. It was a long way and a shitty road, but whatever. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, I've made the trek up there too, and it definitely can get a little dicey, especially the time of year. You were kind of coming up there, but this is a big show you have coming up. I'm really excited for this one. And yeah, great having you on the program to talk about it, but I was wondering if there was anything you wanted to add as we're wrapping up here.
Well, like I said, this show could go from, what it is now to an insanely good show based on what happens with Unified. I'm hoping for the best for Sonny because, man, I wouldn't want that to happen to me, man. I feel devastated for the guy, to be quite honest, and, it doesn't really affect me at all. But I just know if I was in his position, I would be so screwed that it would be insane. So, I mean, I hope Edmonton makes the right decision and they let him continue with this show. And if that doesn't happen, then my plan is to try to help out as many fighters as I can and get them up here. But, I pretty much got a deadline too. Like even the commission, when I told them somebody's going to know Monday or Tuesday, they weren't too excited about that, transferring fights that late in the game. Because they have things that they need to do as well. And so, it's really, basically the clock's ticking whether these guys will actually be able to fight on my show or not. So if Tuesday rolls around, like say Tuesday, probably like 4:30 and I don't hear anything, then chances are I won't have anything for these guys. So it either has to happen like soon or it may not happen at all. And like I said, if I can help as many of these guys as I can, I will.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of want to try to do a similar thing. Like, even though the card's kind of up in the air as to whether or not it's happening, I'm still looking to go down to Edmonton and try to interview some people who are kind of in the scene and get together some sort of feature on what's going on and try to capture this moment, because there's definitely a lot of, negative aspects to it as well. But I feel like this also captures a pretty unique moment in Canadian mixed martial arts history. And I think a lot can, unfurl as, time goes forward from this moment. So yeah, I get what you're saying. The sentiment is all the best, but yeah, it's definitely a bit of a messy scenario.
Yeah, it's a little devastating for Edmonton, that's for sure. And, a lot of people have contacted me and they're like, well, are you afraid Grand Prairie is going to have a knee-jerk reaction to this? I don't think so. We have, as far as I'm concerned, we probably have one of the best commissions in Alberta. These guys are super thorough. I get away with nothing. Literally, I have to follow the rules to the letter. And knowing that, I appreciate it because I know at the end of the day, my butt's safe because of how thorough they are. And, we're not going to have an issue where the guys come in and they're fighting and they're under suspension. If everybody else did their job and reported suspensions like they're supposed to, you wouldn't have those issues. Not a word of a lie. Tim Hague called me a few times and messaged me a few times wanting to fight on my show. Myself personally, knowing that he'd been knocked out 3 times in a year, I said no. And I wouldn't, and he kept, he was getting cleared with the Russian promotion. He sent me all this stuff because that was another one of my issues that, he wasn't cleared. And the last thing, I want to do is take a fighter from another promotion that's signed under contract and says he can't fight for me. So, I was concerned about that. I was concerned about the fact that he had been knocked out. So basically I had nothing for him because he doesn't fit the criteria of the commission up here. So I don't even need to go to the commission to ask him because I know what the answer is because it's cut and dry. It's black and white. The rule's the rule. That's the way it is. End of story.
Yeah, for sure. And I agree with that sentiment about Grand Prairie being one of the better, more thorough commissions, if not the very best. But if anyone's in the area, actually in Grand Prairie, they should definitely check out this card going December 15th at the NTRAC Center. Even if someone's not in the area, they can still get that on Fight TV and check it out. XFFC 16 is going and should be a fun card, and really appreciate the time with XFFC President Darren Cliffe. Thanks a lot, man, and enjoy the rest of your day. Best of luck with the show.
You bet. Thanks, buddy.